PPA evaluation for the first half. For now, we'll rise up for the ICI motto. Request everyone to rise up.
Yaesha supteshu jagrati, Yaesha supteshu jagrati, Kamam 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 kamurusho, purusho, nirvimanaha, nirvimanaha, tadeva shukram, tadeva shukrada brahma, tada brahma, tadeva mritamuchyate, tasmin lokaha, shataha, sarve tadunatyati kaschanatyati kaschan, etadvaita, 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 etadvaita.
So beginning with our first session, speaker for our first session is CA Chandan Lahoti. I'll request Amrita, our coordinator, to introduce our faculty.
Thank you, Nikita. So today's our faculty is CA Chandan Lahoti, and he is a partner with AVA Network, having offices in 9 cities, and is responsible for assurance and strategy of the firm, and is part of core team from last overseas. As a part of EY, he has led and managed audit of large listed entities, including Cummins India, Bharat Ford, Atlantis Copco, etc. He has worked on diverse industry, right from heavy engineering, automotive, and information technologies. Though Chandan has worked in audit and assurance, he has great domain knowledge in direct and indirect taxes as well. He is very active on various industry forums on likes of MVPM, MFP, etc. He is mentoring fresh qualified CAs and is mentor with various group across India. He has also been an active speaker on various topics at EY India level and at ICAI at different forums. This is the second year when he is IND AS and Accounting Standard Committee member at WIRC. As a person, he loves to travel, meeting new people, and helping community at large. Now I will call upon Nikita to present memento to Chandan Lahoti. Now I would call upon for the session, please.
So good morning, everyone. Is it fine if all of us come and occupy the front rows? Bit of exercise for all of you to start with. It's better because I see first 3 rows have not been occupied. ये तो नॉर्मल माइक दे दीजिए, हैंड माइक दे दीजिए, ये इतना नहीं हेवी, पूरा साउंड क्लियर जाएगा। ठीक, अभी वो कॉलम में बंद कर दिया। ठीक, you can hear properly? I could see still many of you are sitting in the last rows. Let's confront, and I'll tell you reason. Topic का नाम क्या है? First time adopter. Who can do it? The ones who are? So for me, it would be very easy. I can pick and choose for some of the questions if you are sitting in the first rows as against the back bencher. See, all of us has done CA, correct? And we have done CA for only one of the most important reason is to be always be the front runners. Sir, you want to come? On the first rows? aa jao na. Okay, fine, no problem. I thought let's see that most of you are seated here. Okay. So, as all of you are aware that today's full discussion would be rolling around IND AS, correct? Most of the sessions which you might have attended or wherever we go, we discuss about what? 115 important in IND AS, 116, ECL, discounting, etc. But most of the time, it happens that in training or in ICI sessions, no one practically discuss about applicability of IND AS is fine, but if as a chartered accountant, whether you are in industry or whether you are in a CA firm, when IND AS is applicable, what are the next steps which all of us need to follow so that as a CA to comply for your client or as an industry for your own company, what are those steps need to be taken? So that I will be covering in next 90 minutes broadly from an IND AS perspective. So other than what is applicable first time, but many more questions which would be in your mind on IND AS, we can cover those. So it would be totally interactive session. I don't want that one-side dialogue, or I would just give some gyan on IND AS. We'll discuss about practical problems or practically what we need to do. Okay? Some things before IND AS, because IND AS definitely is what? 8-year-old, yeah, it's not even adult. So it's very new for all of us. Anyways, all of us are adult, but IND AS is not adult. In India, it's only 8 years old. IND AS which has come, yeah, and let's see in current environment, what we see about IND AS. All of you agree or don't agree? 115. Huh? Correct? So what has happened that AS9 was very simple comparatively. Risk reward. Risk reward transfer, revenue recognized. It's really out of I would say all IND AS, this is in top 3 complex standard. Top 3 complex standard is 115, because in any scenario, if you believe the goods are transferred or even reached customer, not necessarily 100% of revenue can be recognized. And definitely will not discuss at length about 115, but yes, from a 115 perspective, many things. To give one example, even if I've sold goods, I've exported goods, what we do, 100 rupees of bill amount, we recognize revenue. 115 doesn't allow, because there might be many components in that goods. It might be goods, warranty, it might be freight, insurance, various other things. So it says just bifurcate between those components and recognize revenue as per the requisite completion of the task, and control being. So do remember one thing, when 115 is a topic, control is the most important word. Okay? Anyone from industry? Okay. So you are well versed with IND AS, or you are in a learning stage from an IND AS perspective? Learning stage. What do you believe जब IND AS word आता है, if IND AS is applicable to your company, etc.? Do you correlate? In Pune currently test match is going on, and as you know, all of you know, our best players Rohit and Virat could not score anything. But still, when finally financial instrument is something which is the most complex before 115. When I mean it's most complex, it's a complex for the ones who have not gone in depth about that particular standards. So once you practice, it won't be. But yes, for the ones, it's like something we don't know. And for the newer ones, IND AS is like something where you can go and say, oh, I'm an IND AS expert. Chalo, no problem. Just thought of setting the tone, and reels, meme, which is now a trend, and even though we are chartered accountants, people believe that we are bored, but I think so we can say यार हम लोग भी एक trend के हिसाब से जा रहे. The intention was, few people believe यार एक IND AS एक trend है, but I think so IND AS is not trend. It's now our fact, and it's part and parcel of our life. And I'll give few examples. Today in India, how many companies IND AS is applicable or used? Any guess numbers? 100, 200, 500? How many? Anyone want to give a chance? How many companies IND AS is applicable? Louder. 10,000? Any other different number? How many listed companies in India? Huh? 78,000. So for them, it's applicable, correct? And there are more than 16,000 companies as of today where IND AS is applicable. And those 16,000 are top 16,000 companies in India. And if we all sitting here are not well versed with IND AS, can we work with those companies as a statutory auditor? Question mark. As a direct tax practitioner also we can't, because we can't file the return if you don't understand IND AS. How you will do computation? How you will do transfer pricing? And in addition to that, two set of additional companies each year are transferring to IND AS. One, IPO, correct? So any company, so we'll discuss, any company want to go for an IPO, main board, they need to do IND AS. And not necessarily जितने IPO आ रहे हैं, बहुत सारे companies, it takes 2 years, 3 years to get into IPO, correct? So all those companies, and all the companies, okay, whose share capital, whose net worth is more than 250 crores as at the last year, IND AS is applicable. So minimum 1,000 companies are added under IND AS each year. So just imagine what is the depth of IND AS today and after 5 years, and then decide where you want to be. Okay? So applicability, as we discussed, uh, okay, as we discussed, from an applicability perspective, every listed company IND AS is applicable. And when I meant those 7,000 listed companies, correct? You meant 8,000 odd listed companies in India as of today. Their subsidiaries, associate and JVs are much more. Ek entities might have 10, 20, 50, 100 subsidiaries. All of them IND AS is applicable. So the count is very big. Okay, so from an applicability perspective, a listed company, not small SME IPO, only main board. Okay, subsidiary, associate, JVs of those listed companies, and any and every company whose net worth for the preceding year was more than 250 crores. Clear from an applicability perspective? And I'll tell you, I have seen it. Few companies, IND AS was applicable, but the statutory auditor was not aware of the applicability. The stat audit report was signed under IGAP, submitted to ROC. This has happened. Or they noticed just a month before signing. एक month में IND AS conversion नहीं होता. And the next our 80 minutes would be discussion on IND AS conversion. It happens at times for you that you are the statutory auditor, but you don't know how to do the first time IND AS conversions, and you reach to someone else to do the conversion, or your client. Does that happen to you, or it doesn't happen? Practically, you reached out to someone else from an IND AS perspective. Okay, before that I missed one thing. How many of you have used IND AS in your practice or in your job? Just raise hand so that I come to know practically who are. So you, and raise hand so that I can. Okay, you have applied IND AS as an auditor or as a company, correct? Correct? Long ago. But many years means 8 years before, or even when IFRS was there?
Yeah, so when it was introduced.
2009, 10, 11. The year when IFRS was implemented in India. Roughly 100 odd companies that point of time convert to IFRS, but this it got delayed at that point of time, 9, 10, 11. Okay, no problem. So I can assume that 80% of you have not used IND AS. I can? So I should go at that granular level? But at any point of time, you believe, यार थोड़ा सा ऊपर से जा रहा है, तो just stop me, because it has to be interactive. Ultimately, see, you would be spending your 90 minutes, and after this session, there is something you need to gain out of it. That's an intention. So our motto would be, everyone sitting in this room, minimum have some takeaways after this 90 minutes. Okay, 90 minutes, 100 minutes, whatever basis your and my capacity. Okay. So this was from an applicability perspective. We need to know it, because if we don't know, it would be difficult for us to apply. Yes. As of now, not. So as of now, the SEBI has not mandated for an SME IPO IND AS mandatory. Yes. Restatement also not required from an SME IPO perspective. Clear? Main board, mandatory, including restatement. SME IPO, IGAP. Okay. Some other important considerations. IND AS can be voluntarily adopted, and many companies are doing it. But once adopted, what do you mean adoption of IND AS? So can someone explain me what is IGAP, what is IND AS? Very broadly, what do you mean by IGAP? Because all of you are CA, either in industry or a chartered or a practicing CA or an advisory, as the case may be, should know it. What is IGAP? What is IND AS? Anyone want to give a try? Anyone? Yes?
IGAP is our Indian Generally Accepted Accounting Principles, our accounting standards in general, what we can say, and IND AS is conversed IFRS AS accounting standards.
Bit, I would say bit correct, but not completely. When we mean IGAP and IND AS, those 29 Indian accounting standards is IGAP. Okay? Which means if the financials are prepared as per those 29 accounting standards, it's IGAP, and the financial statement which is prepared as per IND AS is IND AS financials, which are statutory financials. So one need to understand a statutory financials or a statutory audit, what we call in India, happens under only two circumstances now: IGAP, IND AS. Clear? Any doubt, questions here? Now I'm talking about statutory audit. Statutory audit means the financials which are submitted to ROC. Okay? So once, for example, a company's turnover is 200, 400, 500 crores, net worth only 200 odd crores, IND AS is not mandated, but they opt for whatever valid reasons, and that becomes their statutory audit financials. Once adopted, you can't go back. Oh, next year I will do under IGAP because it's not mandated to me. Not possible. Clear? So once in, always in. Okay. So to answer your question, for IND AS, also applicable for a company going for an IPO, last 3 years, 5 years, whatever restatement is required, it has to be done as per IND AS. It's applicable for SFS, CFS. SFS means standalone financial statement, CFS means consolidated financial statement. Applicable to both. मैं सिर्फ CFS में करूँगा, SFS में करूँगा, नहीं. Okay, one more thing. If you are voluntary doing it for your holding company, just hear me out, holding company, and you have some subsidiaries, associates, group has to follow once adopted. That's fine. Okay. The last bullet point is very important. Opening IND AS balance sheet. This is a confusing statement always. Under IND AS, how many balance sheets are required? IND AS financials, just see that, visualize IND AS financials. The first time IND AS financials. How many balance sheets are there? 3. And how many P&L? 2. So the third balance sheet is called opening balance sheet. Okay? The third balance sheet is called opening balance sheet. And this standard, or this standard and my next 90 minutes is about that, not limited to that opening balance sheet, but the opening balance sheet is only for the first year. Not always 3 balance sheets, but only the first time there are 3 balance sheets. And this standard is a very good standard. So at times we believe यार GST और tax में बहुत सारा planning होता है, बहुत सारा advisory होता है, correct? Agreed, all of us? Indirect tax, there is a lot of advisory possible. Income tax, there is an advisory possible. This standard gives more advisory work than any other standard, because this standard is, and to everyone's surprise, 101 standard equivalent to IFRS, lot of changes done in India. So IFRS standard, as it's picked, lot of changes done, lot of exemptions. lot of exceptions. That is a crucial point as an advisor, as a statutory auditor, as a company. As a company, you need to foresight how you want your future P&Ls, and that doesn't mean it's a planning or say, but you have a lot of options to adopt as your principle of the financial statement, what you can do later. Few examples we will discuss in detail, but I will tell you. So for example, a company has done a revaluation or a fair value of their fixed assets in an earlier gap, which is an I gap. लैंड है 100 करोड़ की, मुंबई में आज वो 1000 करोड़ की लैंड है, इन योर फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट 1000 करोड़ की लैंड दिख रही है. Under an IND AS, when you can take that as a deemed cost. Just one concept, and we'll discuss that in detail. I see some eyebrows on it, but we'll discuss in detail. There are a lot of exceptions and exemptions which you can use during this year, and what I'm not covering in 100 minutes, full one standard, practically not possible. But key things, as a first time adopter, for normal manufacturing companies, normal software companies, or normal transactions which would be applicable for any type of company, those I have covered. I have not covered typical points which is very in depth, but so that tomorrow once you go out of this auditorium, basic पूछा तो आ जाएगा. From an IND AS 101 perspective, first time implementation perspective. So voluntary exemptions from IND AS, so it depends whether you want to choose or you don't want to choose. We'll discuss on that. Share based payment transactions. So under IGAP, we had any standard on ESOPs, share based payments, etc.? Yes or no? We didn't have, correct? We had very limited literature in shape of guidance note, which came a guidance note was available long back, but that was very crisp, and recently some 4 years back an additional detailed guidance note came from an IGAP perspective. So from an IND AS perspective, and just we'll spend some more time on this particular topic, and I'll give you crux. So a share based payment, if not recognized in an IGAP, you can start recognizing in IND AS. And I mean you can, future you have to, but in past there's an option which is called exemptions. So for example, if there are any share based transactions for earlier years which were not recognized in IGAP, you have an option to recognize, you have an option not to recognize. You need to choose whether you want to do it or you don't have to do it. Are you getting me? Yes, not only this item, there are more than 30-35 items which you have options. In short, what it says, I'll give you crux. It says if a particular item, share based payment as we discussed, then PP&E, property, plant and equipment, decommissioning liability, or any other item in the balance sheets. So majorly this is from a balance sheet perspective. Any other item in a balance sheet, you have an option to record past transactions or not to record past transactions. If you record past transactions, there are some basic rules for that particular thing. If you don't record, then fine, you need to disclose. So first time the financials are very big. But normally क्या होता है? I've seen majorly tier 2, tier 3 cities, and also between the small practitioners. IND AS, what it is? वो 115 का कुछ एडजस्टमेंट रहेगा, दैट OCI का एडजस्टमेंट रहेगा, एक्चुअल गेन लॉस रहेगा, एंड करंट नॉन करंट, एंड जस्ट डिस्क्लोजर, इंडेस डन. That's normally the trend what the statutory auditor who was doing a statutory audit and the index financials got converged. That's not. A smallest of minute of detail is required, and it takes mammoth of time doing first time index. If someone asks me कि एक महीने में आप इंडेक्स करके दे दोगे, आंसर इज नो. As there is that much options available, and if you don't choose, then it's gone. And if you choose something wrong from a company's perspective for something which might come in future, it will have an impact to the balance sheet or in P&L. Okay, so share based payment we discussed. If share based payment were not accounted for in the earlier year, you have an option to account for. However, you can account for only for those share based payment for the list where publicly available information is available. Okay, clear? Deemed cost, very important. So various scenarios will take from a PP&E perspective, IGAP, and give me some scenarios. From an IGAP perspective, any of you have done or seen any financials where fixed assets were revalued? Fixed asset revalued किया है कभी किसी ने? Raise hand, yes or no? नहीं? Have you seen? Okay. So there are many companies, I would not say, but there are 5-10% of the companies who have revalued a lot of earlier year financial statement. If the financial statements are revalued by any of the company, okay, and those PP&E is at a revalued, so you have an option to consider those revalued PP&E as your deemed cost, and you continue that as a value of the PP&E. Okay, but once that decision is taken, then they become your EA. So deemed cost is a concept not only used in PP&E but various other standards also. So for example, decommissioning related provisions were accounted in books of accounts. You can consider as a deemed cost, and various other items. Clear? Okay. So how many of you have done consolidation, CFS? Correct? Under current IGAP, if you are doing a CFS, you account for at cost, correct? Subsidiaries, investment, or associate, here all options are there. Okay? So option 1, buy subsidiary or associate at the time of adoption. You can decide whether to do a fair value, whether to do a cost. You are getting me? That option is there. But once chosen, then there is no option. Further, यार एक particular subsidiary बहुत बढ़िया कर रही थी, and you want to do a fair value for that subsidiary only at an opening balance sheet, but then later only cost. Possible. 5 subsidiaries, 1 subsidiary fair value, 4 at cost, later everything on cost. Some questions will help me. Are you getting, because I want to just gauge whether 10,000 feet से जा रहा है या कुछ समझ रहा है. Because I don't want a scenario where यहाँ नहीं जा रहा है. Are you getting? या फिर
understand IND AS in the most simplest manner.
how to understand IND AS in most simplest manner. Definitely from an IND AS perspective, okay, we can discuss how to understand, but you need to go standard by standard also. It's like understanding IGAP in the simplest manner is an historical cost as a concept, okay, like IND AS is a fair value. So the intention of an IND AS is the financial statement should be fair value and not an historical cost. कभी तो कोई तो account for कर दिया वो वैसे ही चले आ रहा है. That's at a 10,000 feet. But at an individual transaction, AS 19, AS 15 और AS 9 तीनों भिन्न हैं. वैसे all IND AS are totally different. Conceptually, from an IND AS, historical cost to a fair value. Substance over form. IGAP was substance. पेपर पे क्या है? पेपर पे है risk and rewards transferred. IND AS substance. Risk and reward transfer, but in essence nothing. No revenue recognized. You getting me? At 10,000 feet. That's an answer. Okay? Okay, this is very important because at times this decision will impact on the future. For example, you decide a subsidiary to be valued at a fair value. Yes? And later also. Then every quarter, every year, that fair value report is required to value that subsidiary or an associate at a fair value. You're getting me? So when an entity prepares separate financial statement, cost or in accordance with 109, and first time I will choose either major investment at a year. Second, once, yes. Hold. Opening balance sheet, not through OCI. Opening balance sheet, not through OCI. So I understood your question and two answers. Two answers means there are two separate items. Opening balance sheet mein kiya, not through OCI because it's only third balance sheet. Okay? And it goes directly to the other equity schedule and various other line items. Either of the item it would be. समझ में आ रहा है? What is his question? If you do something adjustment from an IGAP to this, there would be some adjustment whether flown through statement of profit and loss account or directly to balance sheet, directly to balance sheet to balance sheet. Subsequently, okay, if a subsidiary, whether revalued, whether fair value at an initial balance sheet, later you choose as a cost, then there is no impact. Correct? But if you choose fair value, then yes, through OCI. Then the profit and gain loss of that subsidiary at the time of disposal through P&L as gain or loss on the sale or disposal of a subsidiary. So the balance will shift from an OCI to the retained earning. Because ultimately what it says, your subsidiary related fair value adjustment should not go through P&L, but whenever you sell, you have a loss or gain, which is a loss or a gain to a company, and hence through statement of profit and loss account, and that too through P&L and not OCI. Clear? So very important that this decision, what you take is crucial, because whatever you take, there are repercussions. If you do fair value, so for example, when he meant this, if you do a fair value and the fair value is at an upwards side, after 3 years you sell, So what will go to P&L is the revised upward fair value versus the selling price. For example, a cost of a subsidiary was 100 because it's over the years, but the fair value as at that date was 500 and you sold at 800. So what will go to P&L? What will go to P&L? I can't hear. 300. But if you would have not done fair value and still kept at cost, what would go to P&L? You are getting me? Clear numbers. Those are numbers which hits the P&L, and these are listed companies, and everyone understand the gain or a loss to a P&L is a significant impact to the investors, shareholders, etc. Good planning tool. As an advisor, company will not know because they will not have that much IND AS experts in the size of a company between 500,000 crores. They can't have a CA who understands IND AS and at depth. They will come to you as an advisor, correct? Okay. This is also very important. Similar type issue. How many of you have dealt with translation difference? FCTR. Yes? Any? Correct? Good. Now, just imagine this is a Conso FS or an SFS also, standalone or a consolidated financial statement having a FCTR. Correct? SFS में FCTR आ सकता है? Yes or no? Yes or no? Oh, okay. How many of you say no? दोनों में से एक तो बोलना पड़ेगा, yes या no. We have to be active. Yes or no? SFS में FCTR आ सकता है क्या? How many of you say no? You say no. You say no. Others, I am assuming yes. आ सकता है. It has a branch office. It has a branch office. In SFS, it might have a branch office, correct? Outside India. FCTR आ जाएगा. Correct? So this is applicable to SFS and CFS. Why I thought? Because there are some misconceptions what we have. FCTR ये वो सब कंसो में ही आता है. SFS also it can come. Okay? Now here the options are similar. अपना subsidiary का example लेते हैं. Okay? IND AS conversion will happen in March 24. Okay? First time IND AS conversion will happen in March 24. IGAP, the company had a subsidiary from 2015. 2015 to 2022 FCTR create हो रहा है. FCTR पता है सबको? Foreign Currency Translation Reserve. Simple. अपने books में पढ़ा हुआ है. Correct? Foreign Currency Translation Reserve, okay, created from 2015 to 2022, some balance would be there. Now we have an option to choose that balance at zero, and transfer that FCTR to your retained earning and start a clean slate. Okay? Option 2, take as it is, balance. Okay, either of the option. Then if you start a clean slate, then from the first year, whatever is difference, it starts getting accumulated to FCTR. And that FCTR from the first year is routed through OCI. Okay, now the bigger important point, when you sell that subsidiary, there will be gain and loss, including the FCTR. If you have taken first option of that FCTR balance of, for example, 100 crores, you make as a zero. Correct? 60 rupees mein, so when dollar was 60, you invested in a company and dollar was 80 in the IND AS conversion, that 20 conversion is sitting in FCTR. You sell subsidiary after 2-3 years at 85. So whether the profit and loss of that subsidiary, sale and loss, 60 से 85 you want in P&L or 80 to 85? Okay, there are various ways. So if you take 80 as a and you clean slate, make it 0, then only difference between 80 to 85 will come. You're getting my point? And if you don't do a clean slate, from 60 to 85. Now, from an auditor's perspective or from a company's perspective, it depends whether you want to choose which of the option, basis that your next accounting starts. इतना पुराने details available है, नहीं है, required है, not required है. But once you do, then it's through OCI. It doesn't hit your P&L. But gain and loss again through P&L. Yes, this we were discussing. So first we discussed share-based payment, where we said we have an option. Then we discussed a deemed cost. Then we discussed about FCTR. Now it's decommissioning liability. Yes. So the option is available, first time adoption on all at yes. First time adoption, those options are there. So I said few are option exemptions, exceptions from IFRS, some Indian specific, and some clarification through ITFGs came later. So those options are available. So here similar. So I am discussing about all exceptions or exemptions. Okay, decommissioning liability. IGAP, very limited literature on decommissioning liability. Correct? Decommissioning liability, restoration, similar liability, etc. I want one or two of you to explain what is decommissioning liability, what is restoration cost, and we believe यार ये तो थोड़ी normal companies में applicable होगा. It might be for an ONGC or such oil and gas related companies. Answer is no. Many companies it's applicable, not only limited to manufacturing. I'll take one manufacturing example. I will take one IT example. IT company में भी ये applicable है. But no one applies this. क्यों मालूम ही नहीं है. Any examples? Simple word के हिसाब से जाओ ना कि what is decommissioning liability or what is restoration cost? This example, correct? वापस oil and gas, ONGC ये वो सब है. Yes, just hold there. The same example applies to manufacturing company. Same example applies to an IT company. Think about it and give me an example. 100% all leasehold agreements are in that way only. A land taken for 10 years on a lease. The agreement says the way you took, the way you need to give me. You create some infrastructure, building, blah, blah, blah. After 10 years, there's a cost to restore. IND AS says make provision for that. IND AS says make provision for that. There is plant. There are plant and machineries. IT company, leasehold property. You take bare shell, कुछ नहीं होता है. ऊपर कंक्रीट नीचे कंक्रीट बीच में कुछ नहीं. आईटी कंपनीज वैसे ही लेते हैं. You create your own infrastructure, you need to give as is. That liability provision need to be. Yeah. Now from this point, one, if such provisions were made in books of accounts earlier, correct? Normally in PPE, property plant equipment में वैसा provision करके 100 rupees का PPE है, 10 rupees restoration cost, you make 90 as the case may be. Lot of exceptions. Exemptions I would say available here. So for example, here an interesting point is PP&E and a liability. So decommissioning liability की entry क्या होगी? Decommissioning liability की entry क्या होगी? One leg in a liability because it's a provision whenever it comes, and second in a PP&E, correct? Now पहले आई गैप में डिस्काउंटिंग नहीं होता था, अभी इंडेस में डिस्काउंटिंग है, करेक्ट? बट आई एम नॉट टॉकिंग अबाउट आई गैप. मैं एक प्रोविजन करी थी 100 रुपीज़ की, पीपीएनई एंड लाइबिलिटी एंट्री वाज पास्ड. नाउ दिस decommissioning liability is one portion, PPNE is other portion. From a PPNE standard perspective, we discussed deemed cost. So for example, there was an PPNE of 100 rupees in the books of accounts. Hear me out, very important point. 100 rupees PPNE in the books of account as a cost. It had depreciated, it had decommissioning liability related entry, but there is a deemed cost concept that whatever it is sitting you take as is. Means जो भी नंबर है वो revalued नंबर है, fair valued नंबर है, depreciated नंबर है, एंड ऑल्सो decommissioning liability नंबर है, उसको तुम डीम्ड कॉस्ट ले सकते हो. मतलब 100 के जगह 90, 80 एज अ पीपीएनई वैल्यू. मतलब वो एंट्री जो की थी एक लेग गायब हो गई. गेटिंग माय पॉइंट? समझ में आ रहा है क्या नहीं? वो गायब हो गई क्योंकि ओपनिंग बैलेंस शीट में वो डीम्ड कॉस्ट आ गया. बट यार ये एक लेग तो बाकी है, बैलेंस शीट कैसे टैली करूं? So what does standard says? That leg you adjust from a retained earning, okay? Adjusted retained earning. If you want to, if you have to continue, you can continue. Other leg will hit in retained earning. So I'm mixing two standards here, okay? There was a decommissioning liability of rupees 10. Accounted for in IGAP, PPNE एडजस्टमेंट, लाइबिलिटी एडजस्टमेंट. एक्चुअल में तो होगा 10-15 साल बाद खर्चा आएगा, बट बुक्स में एंट्री की हुई है. PPNE 100 था, बट यू मेड अ डिकमिशनिंग लाइबिलिटी से अपने PPNE उस हिसाब से 10 एडजस्ट कर लिया. नाउ इन 101 देयर इज एन ऑप्शन अवेलेबल, द फिक्स्ड एसेट वॉट एवर इज द वैल्यू, 100 रुपीज ग्रॉस बुक, 20 डेप्रिसिएशन ऑलरेडी डन, 10 decommissioning liability, 70. You take 70 as a fixed assets or PP&E value in your books and start depreciating from 70. Okay? So वो 10 की जो एंट्री थी वो गायब हो गई. But decommissioning liability की second leg is still sitting. I'm talking about that. You have various options. So I'm just trying to tell every entry there is various options available. And you need to guide client कि क्या करना चाहिए, asking them futuristic questions. ये क्या होने वाला है, आने वाला है, नहीं आने वाला है, अभी रिजर्व्स में एडजस्ट कर ले क्या, बाद में पीएनएल में चाहिए क्या. And many times happens लिस्टेड कंपनी में इंडेस तो अडॉप्ट हो गया और ये सब नहीं सोचा. एग्जाम्पल, आई एम जस्ट टेकिंग अ एग्जाम्पल. नहीं सोचा, दोस कॉस्ट कम्स लेटर एंड none of the listed companies finance team will want an additional cost other than the normal business cost, correct? Then they call, अरे ये तो इंडेस एडजस्टमेंट्स है. बट if it have been thought through at that point of time from a mindset that later how the entry will impact, it can be done. Okay? So we are discussing as a statutory auditor what we need to think, as an advisor what we need to think. Otherwise for me it was very simple. मैं आता था dim cost बताता था मैं not no option available. नहीं नहीं. So this is a standard which says you have various options which you choose. Once you choose, then you also choose what you will do in future, not with this, for the newer ones. That time you do it. This is one time. Clear? नहीं समझ रहा है तो I can wait. Yes. Louder, louder. Decommissioning doesn't happen now, it will happen later. Yes, because there is a standard. For example, आज मैं लीज ले रहा हूँ. फर्स्ट तो आई गैप में भी वो कंसेप्ट था बट नॉट एक्सप्लिसिटली रिटर्न. अभी तो स्टैंडर्ड में है. आज मैंने एक लैंड ली. आई गिव एन एग्जांपल. लैंड लिया, उसमें बिल्डिंग खड़ा किया. 20 साल बाद वो लैंड के कॉस्ट से ज़्यादा तो वो बिल्डिंग गिरा के उसको प्लेन करके देने का लगता है. और वॉट एवर द कॉस्ट इज, स्टैंडर्ड सेज दैट एक्सपेंस नीड टू बी अकाउंटेड फॉर नाउ, लायबिलिटी नीड टू अकाउंटेड फॉर नाउ. Yes. हाँ. सो पीपीएनई में जब डालोगे तो डेप्रिशिएट ओवर द पीरियड ऑफ 20 ईयर्स ही होता है. बैलेंस शीट में लायबिलिटी तो खड़ी करनी है. हाउ मच इट गोज टू पीएनएल वी आर नॉट डिस्कसिंग. वी आर डिस्कसिंग बैलेंस. नहीं 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 नहीं. Liability first at a measurement, or rather I would say at an accounting level, पूरा 20 rupees, if 20 rupees is the cost, you need to account for all 20. IGAP में concept नहीं था उसको discounting करना. Under IND AS there is a concept of discounting. I have paid, I have accounted for 20 as a liability, but I don't have to pay today. I have to pay over 20 years. Then you discounting. So PPNE के through depreciation में impact आता है, discounting के through अदर लेग में इंपैक्ट आता है. नो सम गेम एट पीएनएल लेवल. बट दोज एंट्रीज आर पूरा इंडेक्स ऐसा ही है, दो लेग्ड है. पीपीएनई, डेप्रिसिएशन, 116 एक जगह आरओयू असेट बढ़ाते हैं, एक जगह लायबिलिटी बढ़ाते हैं. थ्रू डेप्रिसिएशन वन एंट्री आता है एंड थ्रू द इंटरेस्ट एंड अदर एक्सपेंसेस दूसरा एंट्री आता है. बट टाइमिंग ऐसे होता है ड्यू टू डिफरेंट रेट्स, डिस्काउंटिंग रेट एक्सेट्रा, इट डजंट मैच. Over the period it becomes zero, but the depreciation and interest is always not same. Getting my point? The ROU asset and the liability amount is not same because the way the P&L impacts are there differently. Yes. Sorry, louder. Lease transaction. As of the date of the transaction. No. For example, I have purchased a plant and machinery in year 2021. What does IND AS says? You have taken this on lease. If you would have gone to a bank, which is your bank, and taken a loan for that type of an asset, what rate of interest, basis your company's category A, B, A, AAA, what rate you will get, that is the rate to be used at that date, and used over the period. Rate might fluctuate here and there. It's like you taken a loan at that point of time. Got it? Clear? It was important point. So similarly, decommissioning, restoration, what we discussed, it's just a literature. Very important. Asset held for sale, non-current assets. So IGAP mein normally there was no explicit standard for non-current assets, non-current asset held for sale, etc. Under AS10, yes, there is some literature available where it's there, but there is specific standard in IND AS now. Okay? Yes, that limited literature, now it's an IND AS. Okay, and various other literatures available. So few examples. Okay, few examples. So there are a lot of exemptions and exceptions available here. Now, for example, a plant. So do we do is an important aspect from an IND AS perspective. There is a plant which was sold in the month of July and you are doing the audit in the month of September for previous year. What you will do? There is a plant. Plant means a big plant. Out of that, a small plant is sold in the month of July, and you are doing audit for March 31st, 2024. Earlier, what you used to do for that plant? Others? Others? Hence we are they don't know. That's a problem. The only criteria is if the asset is sold in the month of July, just go and see management intention, whether management knew that they are going to sell or not, and from a documentation perspective, whether there is a board approval or not, board knew, etc., etc. If it's there, then what you do? What you do? PPE से निकालो, PPE से निकालो, investment नहीं, current asset दिखाओ, separate line item, and how to value? How to value? Huh? How to value? How to value? Not the amount at which you sold. Amount at which you sold or adjustment to the depreciation. For example, it's a depreciable asset. जुलाई में बेचे हो तो अप्रैल, जुलाई में बेचे हो तो अप्रैल में जून जुलाई का भी depreciation है ना, correct? तो adjustment and you show as a ये. Now a typical question for all the chartered accountants who also practice tax. Tax में क्या होगा? Asset तो PPE से निकाल दिया, current assets में दिखा दिया, some loss gain already gain तो नहीं होगा, मतलब gain we can't track. Some loss recognized in P&L. What you will do in tax? Gross block में क्या करोगे? Tax audit में क्या करोगे? Typical question comes to mind. What's the answer? Huh? No impact. Others? No impact. Impact, not impact? Answer is no impact. Correct. But what happens to the tax practitioner? मैं कैसे करूँ? Books में इसलिए वो दिखाते नहीं. So typically still small size companies or the companies which are tax driven, the accounts are prepared basis tax. But accounting standards are very clear. Accounting standard says you account for, there is a gap difference. Under tax, next year. Under books, earlier year. Clear? Clear? Okay, great. So that's there. Clear disclosure is required. We discussed. So there are options, whether to choose, not choose, how to disclose, etc. in first time adoption. So these were few critical exceptions which is mentioned in the standard itself, which we discussed. So there are roughly more than 15 such items. We discussed 6, 7 which are very crucial and applicable to all. Very important. business combination. We'll discuss first time adoption. A lot of options given. I don't know how they realized, I don't know, or whether they realized some of the companies might have the problem and they, so this is India typical adjustment. So for example, business combination is a separate standard under IND AS, which was not there here. AS14 was there, but AS14 has a limited literature, pooling of interest method, purchase method, etc. Business combination or detailed standard, lot of things are given. Here only fair value is allowed. So under IND AS 103, when you account for when you do any business combination, okay, and business combination definition is also different as compared to AS14, but when you do a business combination transaction, okay, you need to fair value all assets and liabilities, known, unknown, off balance sheet, balance sheet. Clear? That's done. Now, for example, 1st April 2022 is our opening balance sheet, because we are seeing we are still doing March 24 का audit, 25 तक अपन नहीं पहुंचा अभी, 24 audit. Okay. Now the option is 1st April 2022 onwards, any business combination done, that you need to account for as the business combination. There might be a companies where business combination has done in past, correct? For example, there is a business combination or an acquisition merger, as the case may be, in 2000, year 2000, 2005, 2010, 2015, 2020. These are the 5 business combinations done by the particular company over the last 5 years. So what does standard says? For example, you have done some business combination in 2000 which you want to account for now as a business combination and do a lot of fair value adjustments. Now hear me out. Under IGAP, pooling of interest or purchase method accounting done. IND AS, how it need to be done? How it need to be done? Louder. Under IND AS, business combination accounting कैसे करना है? अभी 2 मिनट पहले बोला था मैंने. Fair value, correct? तो बहुत सारे intangible assets create होते हैं fair value में. बहुत सारे और assets, land, building, fair value होते हैं. So balance sheet looks very good. 2000 में एक acquisition किया था, जिसका मस्त अकाउंटिंग हुआ था at that point of time at a book value etc. चलते हैं पुलिंग ऑफ इंटरेस्ट मेथड से अकाउंट फॉर किया था, इसलिए बहुत सारा फेयर वैल्यूज नहीं कर पाए थे. यू वांट टू डू इट. सो 2000 में जो एक्विजिशन किया था, यू कैन फेयर वैल्यू नाउ all those assets and liabilities of that business combination as of that date and account for in your current financial statement. You're getting my point? Today you can do it. कितना भी पीछे जा सकते हो, but जब भी आप जितना भी पीछे जाओगे, एक डेट. In current case, there was an acquisition also in 1995, but we decided कि 2000 वाला acquisition अच्छा है, let's do it for a practical reason. उसके बाद वाले पांचों भी करने पड़ेंगे. You're getting my point? I don't have chart, otherwise I would have explained. 1995 acquisition done, 2000 acquisition done, 2005, 10, 15, 20 acquisition done. Company choose to do a business combination for 2000 year acquisition. Then 2005, 10, 15, 20 का भी करना पड़ेगा. 1995 का करने की जरूरत नहीं. You're getting my point? They might choose not to do anything before 2002, 22, April 22 being our opening balance sheet. No business combination, fine. किसी को सिर्फ 2020 का करना है, that's fine. But 15 का opt किए तो 20 भी करना पड़ेगा. So all those options are available, but you can go back wherever you want. But if you choose a particular combination, उसके बाद वाले से लेके 22 तक का you have to do all. And hence, whenever you do IND AS, if you are not aware of this case, how can you guide as an advisor? It's not about threshold, it's about
How many years, most to most you can go back? Like 10 years, 20 years, kitna usko
my limited reading of the standard, it says you can go back. But if you go back from that day, because what it says fair value na. So for example, there were various acquisitions done by the company. Really those assets were not recognized at a fair value. बहुत ज़्यादा पीछे तो जाके कोई मतलब ही नहीं है. 20 साल पीछे जाके क्या करोगे, उसका क्या है? Records, data, etc. But जा सकते हैं. Is it, tell me very frankly, is it not worth evaluating various options and guiding client as an advisor? Yes or no? Lot of brands which were acquired over the period were not accounted for in the balance sheet. Loop side होता है, उसको फिर amortize भी करना पड़ता है. Yes. Revaluing नहीं. Now what? Because अभी IND AS में ना words बहुत use करना important है, क्योंकि revalued word under IGAP was differently used and in IND AS different. So revalued, restated are just trying to tell, let's use correct word. You tell me and I will tell you what is that word. That is futuristic. Your question is after implementation? Ha. So the question is not related to this. You are talking about investments other than subsidiaries. Other than subsidiaries only, you have a lot of options. एक subsidiary का तो थोड़ी आप ये करोगे. Either you take for subsidiary cost, so nothing goes to OCI, P&L, correct? You take fair value, it goes to OCI. Subsidiary is held from an investment perspective. OCI and P&L is concept wise, whether you intend to sell, whether you intend to earn. So उसमें concept नहीं आएगा. Yes, now in investment, other than subsidiary, etc., we can discuss. You are getting my point? Now you can ask question. Example, give example. हाँ. Opening balance sheet or futuristic? Opening balance sheet, if you are decided, okay, to route through OCI, it's a futuristic. If you are revaluing at that point of time, it will go to your return earning. Because futuristic तुम्हारा OCI के through या P&L के through जाएगा. Not in opening balance sheet. ये opening balance sheet is an option. Futuristic you choose whether OCI or P&L. So his question, to take it forward, many items, shares, shares purchased, sitting in balance sheet. I have 2 shares in my the company has purchased. One share purchased with an intention not to sell or short term gain loss book नहीं करना है. Another is, yes, not an intraday or anything, but investment done in that company to book a gain. It might be a longer period, but to book a gain. So for example, I will tell you, I have a company and I have bought a share of 1%, 2% in a company where with an intention है उसमें कुछ तो मुझे from a long term benefit perspective it need to be done. So you can opt that through OCI or you can opt that through P&L. Okay, so why I'm trying to tell, every investments you have an option. This is the criteria to opt through different modes and methods. Mix approach. Normally, they don't want to fluctuate their PNL a lot, and hence such investments go through OCI. But wherever it totally depends whether it's related to bond, etc., in mutual funds, everything through PNL. But equity, because company will not buy shares from an as a AOA or a MOA just to earn gain and losses through sales. So that time, other than those, it's through OCI. With share market के हिसाब से the PNL will fluctuate. Okay, here question I think so clear. Last bench clear on the business combination. Various options available for no. Initially you decide what you need to do, then you decide through OCI or PNL as the case may be, and subsequently through that route only. So for example, we decide through PNL और सारे test pass हो गए, and then all fluctuation goes to PNL. So I will tell you, a company, I've seen various items. A company invested in SPV, solar, which is recently going on, SPV, correct? You have an option for that through PNL or OCI. So that investment every quarter, every half year, you need to take the valuations and you need to route through OCI. Second, a company has taken a bond, 3 years bond, 5 years bond, and further the bond is invested, you can take through PNL. Because your intention is to earn. If your intention is to earn from the profits from that bond, you can use PNL. And the intention is to hold for some reasons, then through OCI. So next speaker has also come, but in 15 minutes, as we started 15 minutes late, I'll complete in 15 minutes. So depreciation on first time adoption. So depreciation, okay, when we talk, so a lot of PP&E, just assume now PP&E, IGAP, PP&E, or I'll use word fixed assets, because in IGAP we use fixed assets word. Fixed assets, earlier useful life concept was there, but there was a schedule also which prescribed the rates, minimum rates. याद आ रहा है सबको? So the company has taken a useful life for the depreciation or those rates which are prescribed. You're getting my point? So there was both options available. Now here, if you have used as a rates applied as is, as that point of time, now you have option, okay, to revisit all those. IND AS doesn't prescribe any rate. It only says useful life. So what you can do, you have an option. First, वो rate लिया है, you don't change. You take the assets, balance useful life, 10 साल का asset, 5 years completed, 5 years pending. Then those balance 5 years, you take a revised useful life as 6 and appreciate over 6 years or 4. Okay? So, first time adoption, there are a lot of options available that you can recompute it. You can recompute it from the day when the asset was purchased. Okay? So, because you have taken the prescribed rate, you can go back 7 years back, reassess the useful life concept, then depreciate again and change the reserve, and futuristic to definitely. So that option is available. Take as is option available. Fair value, useful life now and the balance useful life. So various options available, and I'll tell you Most of the companies who are smart enough has evaluated a lot of options and then they have chosen it because directly it impacts P&L. Depreciation hit to the company immediately once you choose whatever options are there. Okay? Processing fees on loan. We discussed one line item. Okay? Decommissioning liability. At that point of time, I said, decommissioning liability, there are two legs in balance sheet. One was in PP&E, other was in liability. Similarly, on processing fees, there are two legs. Okay, so earlier and IGAP, you didn't have any concept of processing fee adjustment to the loans. Have you heard? IGAP mein processing fees which is paid under IND AS, there is a concept of an IRR and then adding the adjustment to the borrowing, etc. That concept was not there in IGAP. Okay, the entry at that point of time on the opening balance sheet will increase the loan amount, decrease, increase as the case may be, the processing fees adjustment to the borrowing. Okay, and the another leg. Now here what happens? The adjustment goes to the PP because when you take a processing fee under IGAP through a borrowing cost, you adjust the PP borrowing cost. याद आ रहा है? Even though the borrowing was not increased, so just hear me out. Under IGAP, you have taken a loan, 100 rupees loan. Loan was shown 100 only, correct? But PP&E में processing fees and interest was added as a borrowing cost. एक ही लेग होता था type of. Now, under IND AS, processing fee need to be adjusted in a borrowing through an IRR rate, etc. So borrowing भी fluctuates. Borrowing cost से PP&E also fluctuates. Now, under IND AS, in first time there is an option available that in IGAP, PP&E is adjusted and you have taken a deemed cost as a concept. So processing fee ko as is adjustment you have taken, but on borrowing, 100 rupees jo borrowing 80 ho gaya hai, this 80 on an opening balance sheet, you need to restate with the processing fee charges paid. So that borrowing will undergo change. You getting my point? वापस एक लेग, क्योंकि एक लेग डीम कॉस्ट में चला गया और दूसरा लेग यहाँ प्रोसेसिंग फी के साथ एडजस्ट करना है. So there are options available here. One need to choose those options. Getting my point? कि जब तक अपने को IGAP में क्या ट्रीटमेंट करते थे, if we can't keep that in mind, we will have some doubts. And the problem is, we can use those exemptions or exceptions if we know what to do or एक different legs कहाँ जा रहे of the entry. Then accordingly you this I think so we discussed at length, deemed cost of an investment, or I'll just clarify further. If for example a subsidiary which was valued at cost in IGAP at an inception or IND AS inception, you want to value that as a fair value or cost as the case may be. Both options are available, but you do now fair value, but later at a cost. Those all options are available, but then the fair value is a deemed cost. Fair value of the subsidiary is a deemed cost, और वो वहीं रुक जाता है. Fair value versus historical cost. Correct, there was a question, key difference between at a high level, IGAP was an historical cost concept and this is a fair value concept. Restatement. IGAP mein, what we used to do in IGAP, if we find an error in the financial statement, in balance sheet or a P&L, if we find an error in an IGAP, what we used to do? Prior period, correct? From a P&L perspective, prior period, and from a balance sheet perspective, We used to reclass. We used to put a note. Last year balances has been reclassed appropriately required. Under IND AS, no. First it says material. Material is a word used. So for example, छोटा मोटा changes है, छोटा मोटा P&L में adjustment है, fine. If it's material, you need to restate and make third balance sheet. You need to make third balance sheet. Third balance sheet means for the year when it is identified, you go and adjust in the third balance sheet. Otherwise, there is no reclass, nothing. So very typically, you can't write a note. The last wala note रहता था previous year balances reclassed, restated where required, पूरी balance sheet P&L सब change कर दी. No. If it's not material, it says don't do.
Suppose the first time adoption has happened in 2020. And while doing the audit of 2024, it is realized that there was some material errors. So you say third balance sheet. तो कौन से साल का होगा?
4, 3, 2.
Okay,
वहाँ जाके वो ठीक कर लो.
that is the reinstatement.
Yes. Clear? Goodwill. IGAP. Goodwill. Normally क्या होता था goodwill का? IGAP में goodwill क्या होता था? Amortized? Here no amortization. Each year impairment assessment need to be done and accordingly adjustment need to be taken. Each year. Okay? Presentation of financial statement we have heard. So in IGAP no OCI concept, here an OCI concept. OCI is a statement of profit loss account only. In essence, OCI is what? Temporarily items which are in an OCI, but OCI has two concepts. One, routed through P&L later, routed through P&L later, or routed through P&L never, which means reclassification of OCI goes directly to SOCI, or in layman's term, the retained earning types adjustments, and some adjustments routed later through P&L. For example, hedge on sales is routed through P&L whenever the hedge transactions is completed. Actual gain and loss routed through P&L. There are some items like OCI on investments, which at the time of sale it's routed through P&L. But there are some items which goes to FCTR. So there are some items which goes to OCI directly, not through P&L, some items here. So all those classification is required, and the most important part which is missed in 90% of the financial statement, and I'll tell you 90% is in an OCI, all these adjustments need to be shown from a disclosure perspective, including tax effect. So for example, hedge reclassification, 100 rupees, tax impact 30. That disclosure is mandatory. People normally miss that two separate lines. So simple hai, there is a structure, schedule format which need to be followed. Consolidation. Very typical, and fortunately I have seen many. Earlier consolidation standard clearly says more than 50% subsidiary, less than 50% associate. Simple concept. Consolidation accordingly happening? No. In IND AS, it's totally control. Whether you control that company or not, you might have only 40% of the equity. Still it's a subsidiary. Possible. You have 60%. Possible that it's not subsidiary. Justification etc. is required. Why if more than 51 still not a subsidiary? But yes, from a concept perspective, it's very clear. You might have I'll give you a typical example. You have a 26% equity in an entity. What you would do? Louder. What do you do? 26% equity hai company ka. Correct? But associate ka definition pass nahi hota hai. So you show normal investment. I'll give an example. Solar wale SPVs, where mandatory, if you want to get an electricity from that company, you need to invest 26% and the balance 74% is by the owners. That time those entities are not shown as an associate in consolidation, subject to agreement, parameters, etc. But at a yes, yes, very clear. And I have seen financials having 26% not consolidated. I have seen 35%, 40% and still shown as a subsidiary, because you might be the single largest shareholder. Yes. So Indian GAAP business combination, goodwill amortize. Here, goodwill and bargain purchase. So in IGAP, we had a concept of goodwill and capital reserve, correct? Capital reserve देखा है कम, but goodwill ज़्यादा देखा है. Here, the concept is goodwill and bargain purchase. Bargain purchase का simple है, यार एक company खरीद रहे हो unrelated party से, how can you make a profit out of that entity itself? कि खरीदते वक्त ही कम में खरीद ली. And hence the word bargain purchase is used, concept wise. Employee benefit, I think so, under IGAP through P&L, here through OCI for defined only in case of defined benefits, whatever is are there. Financial instrument, more 5 minutes, and we'll complete all other items. So financial instrument, I think so we discussed FETPL, FEOCI, amortized cost, etc. So from financial instrument, it's very clear there are various options, whether it, how it need to be accounted for. Every financial instrument you need to evaluate whether that is an amortized cost, whether it would be routed through FETPL or FEOCI. Okay, I'm just giving a very broad here, because there are n number of line items here which we can discuss at length. Segment reporting, earlier it was business and geography, correct? Primary segment, secondary segment, business, whether it's a business or geography. Under IND AS, it's a management approach. Very important. Here, the segment reporting, earlier what they any company used to do was only on the business. मेरे पास एक ऑयल एंड गैस का बिजनेस है, मेरे पास एक माइनिंग का बिजनेस है, एक मेरे पास टेक्सटाइल का बिजनेस है, तो सेगमेंट रिपोर्टिंग होता था, करेक्ट? नाउ नहीं, एक ही मेरे पास टेक्सटाइल है, उसमें भी अलग अलग सेगमेंट हो सकते हैं. हाउ मैनेजमेंट व्यूज इज इंपॉर्टेंट. टेक्सटाइल में यार्न मैन्युफैक्चरिंग है, दैट कैन बी सेपरेट बिजनेस. क्लोथिंग इज सेपरेट, होजेरी इज सेपरेट, बिकॉज might be separate if management is reviewing their internal MIS that way. Are you getting me? जैसे management internal review करता है, I'm not talking plant, I'm not talking business units, I'm talking the way management reviews, that way segment reporting need to be done. So in short, management जैसे देखता है वैसा shareholder ने देखना है. Investment property, no major guidance earlier. But here now from an investment property perspective, so for example, a company has a lot of properties which they have rented out. We're showing as a rent income, correct? Here you need to show as an investment property with, you can account for fair value or at a cost, various options available. But if you're accounting at a cost, fair value need to be disclosed. So just imagine the IND AS financial statement. If you go depth and see those schedules, you'll get the real value of a company. Because for example, there is a property in Mumbai which was at a historical cost, but if the fair values are there, you come to know the real values what there are in the company. Last slide. IND AS 116, I think so all of us might have heard. And ROU and lease liability, that's a new concept. In detail, we have a session today on this particular standard. ECL, so all financial assets out of that debtor, for example, trade receivable. So trade receivable we used to do bad debts and provision for doubtful debts. Now there is an ECL policy which company need to they need to anticipate that in the past. So various different models are there, but in essence, don't just make provision on case to case basis. The debtor का पैसा आएगा नहीं आएगा, it's its trend. Last 5 साल का historical data देख लो कि कितना bad debts होता था, कितना provisioning होता था, एक percentage निकाल लो, and then the percentage you apply. So there are various different models, specific model, one-on-one model. So ECL provision is something also you need to keep in mind whenever you are doing first time IND AS. Future also, but this is important. I think so. This we discussed: measurement of asset liability, amortized cost, FVTPL, control over substance over form, deferred tax to be calculated at balance sheet approach. Earlier gap में क्या होता था? Balance sheet or P&L approach. Now it's only balance sheet approach. Okay. I'll just discuss now deferred tax or undistributed reserve. Next two are very simple. So if you are preparing a consolidated financial statement, okay, you have a subsidiary, you have an associate. What the standard says, there is a reserve sitting in the subsidiary. Subsidiary में reserves होगा नहीं होगा? Yes. So it says the holding company has a right to ask for dividend any point of time. Yes. Is the case same for the associate? Might not, because there might be two parties who will decide. But if it's a subsidiary, you are the deciding factor. So what the standard says, in consolidation, if there is a reserves and surplus and dividend, so dividend, whenever dividend comes from subsidiary to holding, tax need to be paid. Correct? So it says uska tax ka entry aap consolidation mein kar lo. I'm just saying right now in a layman terms, ifs and buts are there, but that entry need to be passed. I've just picked few peculiar items also to explain there. And intercompany adjustments definitely. Yes, but not under 222 subsection E. That's all. Any 2-3 quick questions we can take up? Yes. PP&E? Specific. You have that option available, but not within yeah. Yes.
For the same will be done through OCI or will be.
You are talking about 115?
Yeah, 115.
Okay. So 115, you have various options. At the time, when you are first time adopting 115, you have an option whether to go retrospective or prospective or at that date. If you choose that I am taking all adjustments from this date onwards, then everything is prospective. But if you choose from past, then you recognize that amount and then you adjust subsequently. So at first time 115 adoption you need to choose. That is also applicable in 116. So 115, 116 standard came later in India. So they gave an option yes. So they gave an option whether you want to do restatement of 115 for all open contracts from the date 2, 3, 4 years back, or you can ignore them and take it from forward from this date, whatever sales will happen. You getting my point?
Okay, so जो last first 3 years का जो भी balance sheet रहेगा उसमें कुछ भी adjustment करने की need नहीं है. Going forward
depends how you are chosen at that point of time. कि हम ये choose करते कि हम है ना retrospective कुछ नहीं करेंगे, prospective करेंगे. Then only फ्रॉम दैट डे सेल्स, मतलब वो बैलेंस शीट डेट के बाद के सारे सेल्स के लिए. एंड देयर माइट बी सम एडजस्टमेंट्स कि प्रीवियस गैप में सेल बुक हुआ बट वो सेल नहीं है, ये वो सब वो एडजस्टमेंट सब आएगा.
So that will come in the second balance sheet, not in the first balance sheet. Because in the first balance sheet,
yes, it will not come in second balance sheet, it will come in the second P&L.
second P&L.
Yes. तो ऐसा भी हुआ है कि एक ही सेल दो बार बुक हुआ है. एक सेल दो बार बुक हुआ, आई गैप में पिछले साल, इंडेस में इस साल. गेटिंग माई पॉइंट? ये हुआ है. और दैट कंस्ट्रक्शन कॉन्ट्रैक्ट में तो बहुत हुआ है. Any last question? Chalo, great.
So indeed it was a very enlightful session, interactive session. You tried to cover almost all the relevant aspects relating to this IND AS, IGAP related, first time adoption related concepts. So on behalf of WRC and all the members present here, I would present a vote of thanks and would request all the members to give a big round of applause for our speaker, CA Chandan Lahoti. Next we'll start for our second session, which is on IND AS implication, factor to be evaluated under IND AS during business combination, including PPA evaluation. This will be done by our speaker, CA Disha Maheshwari.